Welcome to this edition of Out of Bounds. I'm John Luck, along with Mary Evers, as we continue our State of the Team series. We're talking about the New England Patriots and a abomination of sorts here in 2019.
Yeah.
Let's get you kind of caught up on what happened in the year that was. Obviously, they won Super Bowl 53. They had a parade, and we thought the offseason was going to go swimmingly. They lost his tight end. We'll get to that in a little bit. But they started the 2019 season off 8-0. The bottom fell out. They played actual talented NFL teams. They lost Week 17 against the Dolphins, which put them in the wild card game. They lost against Derrick Henry and the Titans. So then all of a sudden we have a mess on our hands because Tom Brady's starting a Hulu commercial. He took a freeze frame. We thought he was retiring, but apparently he's not.
Yes.
He made people really confused. He might go to Vegas. And, well, welcome to the new normal here, Patriots fans, as we're just in a whole state of influx.
I think that's a pretty good recap. Do we even need to do the show? That's all you need to know.
So this season didn't go the way a lot of people wanted. 4 big reasons: Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, defense, and competition. We actually broke out the touchscreen here, so this tells you how serious the Patriots collapse was.
Getting serious, yeah.
We had to dig into Mary's salary to buy the touchscreen, but you know. All right, so we're going to go one by one here, ranking the top reasons why this season didn't go the way Patriots fans thought.
I'm going to start off with head coach Bill Belichick, and I got 3 reasons why he screwed everything up this season. 1, drafting N'Keal Harry in the first round. This is the first time that he has ever drafted a receiver in the first round of the draft, I believe.
Might have to go back to the early 2000s, but it's been a long time.
It's been a long time, at least over a decade. Yeah. And when they drafted N'Keal Harry, there were 2 other really decent receivers still on the board that had way more successful seasons than N'Keal Harry did. Deebo Samuels in San Francisco and DK Metcalf in Seattle. Now, N'Keal Harry was injured for the beginning part of the season, and it may not all be Bill Belichick's fault that he did not get caught up to the offense system when he did get back in the team. But I can't say that he was a good pick. I really can't, especially when you had those 2 other receivers still on the board when he was drafted. 2, trading for Mohamed Sanu. Now, at the beginning when they first got Sanu, I thought it was a good idea. Tom Brady definitely needed another wide receiver to work with because the ones he had were not doing well. But it ended up being a bust. He made no impact on the team for the whole season. And then 3rd, he stretched himself way too thin at the coaching position. He keeps losing coaches on his staff, but he's not replacing them. We saw Matt Patricia went to Detroit, Brian Flores went to Miami, and you know what? Bill Belichick is a great defensive coach, 100%. However, I think he needed some help in that coaching position this season so he could have actually focused on being a head coach, because it appeared to me that the only thing he was interested in this year was the defense.
So it's going to make things interesting because Dante Scarnecchia, the offensive line coach, retired, but he's still going to stay in the Boston area, so he could come back. Who knows if they keep losing coordinators the way they are. But when it comes to Bill Belichick, you have number 1 as the big reason. For me, it's the number 2 reason. Now, Belichick is a coach, and he's always been this coach that has a large ego. He wants to prove that he's the greatest coach of all time. He's been in that great match with Tom Brady as far as who has been the leader of the Patriots dynasty. But sticking with Belichick, the GM, you talked about the receivers that he passed on. Rob Gronkowski retired back in March of 2019.
Yeah. So
you would think in the draft they would at least look at the tight end position. They drafted linemen, wide receiver N'Keal Harry, a couple running backs, Jarrett Stidham. They didn't acknowledge the tight end position, which was kind of concerning.
Right.
So much so that before the season started, they signed Ben Watson off the street out of retirement. Now, Watson has served a 4-game suspension for PEDs, I believe. But as the season went on, it was revealed that he tore his Achilles, and he was playing on a ruptured Achilles.
Right.
So for an offense that's predicated around the short passes, using the tight end as a bonus receiver, I would think that the Patriots would have gone out, and especially Bill Belichick would have gone out and at least addressed the tight end concern at some pace here. Matt LaCosse, 131 yards a season, all season receiving. That's not the Patriots offense. No. And we saw it this year, not just really because of the coaching staff or the coaching Bill Belichick, but the general manager Bill Belichick, who can be more hard-headed than the coach.
Right, and I think that, you had to know that Rob Gronkowski was at least considering retiring. And he was for all intents and purposes, the only tight end they really had. So they should have at least drafted a number 2 tight end before they knew that he was going to retire. Because you always have to have a backup plan, and at this point, I feel like Bill Belichick didn't care.
So one example of that was going to be Jared Cook, who signed with the Saints, because before he signed with the Saints, he didn't want to play second fiddle to Rob Gronkowski, which I respect. He wants to go out there and be a player that's on the field. And Gronkowski, for lack of a better term, he screwed the Patriots over. And it kind of makes sense because as far as pay cuts goes and putting him out there injured, Rob Gronkowski kind of put it all on the line for the Patriots, and they didn't compensate him financially. So in the end, he really didn't owe the Patriots anything. So that I have Bill Belichick number 2. You have him number 1 as far as the Patriots' big reason for the collapse of 2019. What's your number 2?
My number 2 is Tom Brady, because this is your leader, and he did not do an excellent job of leading this team this year. He didn't seem to care about any of the new receivers that he got, didn't want to try to catch up with him, and then blamed them for not making the passes. And not for nothing, you are 42 years old. You're not going to be throwing the ball all the way down the field, and his accuracy wasn't fantastic this year either, no matter how long he threw it. So I feel like he pretended like everyone else was the problem and did not acknowledge that he had an issue himself. So that's why he's my number 2.
So we kind of crisscrossed here because when it comes to the collapse of the great Patriots dynasty here in 2019, reason number 1 is number 12. And it kind of goes back to what you were talking about. He didn't work with receivers in OTAs, which he's been synonymous for skipping the OTAs and coming into training camp thinking everyone was going to know the routes and all that. N'Keal Harry was a wide receiver that's a rookie. Jacoby Myers was a rookie wide receiver. They have promise, they have hope. In the end, Tom Brady should have proven that he's a quarterback that's willing to work with the younger receivers. Peyton Manning did it back in Super Bowl 50. He worked with Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders as well. So that's one reason. The other reason, the post-game press conferences, especially after Philadelphia, you get a win over a playoff team like Philadelphia, you come out looking like someone took your dog out back. To go ahead and be whiny like that, well, the offense could be better, we could be better. He's not happy with just winning the game. He's not happy with the defense winning games for the Patriots. He wants to be the sole reason that the Patriots win games, which is great and all. But as a quarterback that's 42, 43, he's seen it all. He needs to prove that, it's team first. And there are some troubling stats here I found. Tom Brady, the fewest touchdown passes since 2006, 24. The fewest yards per completed pass, 6.6 since 2002. So that speaks to the arm strength. And he's had his lowest passer rating, 88, since 2013, and finished 7th in NFL passing behind quarterbacks like Jared Goff, Matt Ryan, Jameis Winston, and just above Derek Carr.
Jesus, okay.
So Tom Brady had a hot and cold season, and a lot of it, in my eyes, is because of Tom Brady himself.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he thinks he's invincible and that this whole TB12 method is going to make him be able to play till he's like 70 years old. But age is a thing. Everyone has to deal with it. And it's almost like he's in denial that he's actually getting older.
I'll give him 12 for TB12. All right, reason number 3.
My reason number 3 is competition. Because even though they played some really terrible teams at the beginning of the year, they were 8-0 at the beginning of the year. The teams that they had lost to, with the exception of Miami in the last week, were really good teams this year. I mean, one of them was Kansas City, who ended up winning the Super Bowl. So you know that that's an elite team that's going to get you very far into the playoffs. Same with the Ravens. They may have kind of choked in the AFC playoffs this year, but they were still a far better team. So playing those types of teams, I think, really killed them, because as good as their defense was this year, stopping people like Pat Mahomes and Lamar Jackson is a tall order to fill. And I think that it's unrealistic to make the defense carry the weight and when the offense was giving no support at all.
I'm going to go number 3 here as well, as far as the reasons the Patriots collapsed this year. And it goes back to what you said. Up till week 8, the Patriots, outscored the opponents 280-61, and only played one playoff team, and it was a borderline playoff team in Buffalo. But the last 8 games of the season, 3 teams they played out of the 8 didn't make the playoffs. So that means they played 5 playoff teams between the AFC and NFC, and they outscored their opponents by a mere 6 points. And we're going to get to it in a little bit, but a lot of it is because of the competition, because they're playing a lot of these running quarterbacks. Dak Prescott, throw Carson Wentz in there as well for Philadelphia if you want. Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. The Patriots have a difficult time adapting to this type of offense that's going out on the field in Baltimore and Kansas City. So there's going to really need to be some movement as far as coaching schemes and defensive schemes, because I said it to my friends after the Super Bowl that it's going to be Jackson and Mahomes in the AFC Championship game most likely for the next 3 to 4 years, unless the Patriots can do anything, and that includes what they're drafting, which we'll get to in a little bit.
And I think that goes back to Bill Belichick as well, because as great of a defensive coach as he's always been in his career, this is a new type of offense that we're facing. So he needs to also adapt, but like Tom Brady, he's getting up there in age, and it's going to make it harder to adapt to the changing times.
You can't change what's not broken. Bill Belichick's old trusty Bill there.
Yeah.
And we have one spot left, which we agree on. That is the defense.
No.
Okay.
I'm going to switch that to offense.
I think it's unfair to blame the defense. They had a very bad game in the last week of the season, but they spent 16 weeks carrying an entire football team because the offense was doing absolute nothing. Tom Brady wasn't doing anything. None of his receivers were doing anything. And the special teams and the defense, had to carry them that entire season. You should be putting up so many more points on the Miami Dolphins. They shouldn't have had to play a close game with Ryan Fitzpatrick. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, and it's the offense's fault, not the defense's fault.
So the defense, which somebody covered up with offense. Okay, well, that's just colored in the O, but we're still learning the whole touchscreen thing.
Yeah, right.
But the defense for me goes back to the competition in the first 8 games of the season. Who were the type of quarterbacks you were playing? You were playing the third-string quarterback for the New York Jets. You were playing at the time Josh Rosen. You were playing at the time Ben Roethlisberger. I could go out there and coach a defense and maybe not go 8-0, but I'd have a pretty good record with that defense. As the season continued to go on, players like Kyle Van Noy, they were more concerned with their contract. Going into the wild card round, Van Noy was talking about his contract. We haven't heard the Patriots do that a lot in past postseason, talk about their contract status. So that was kind of eye-opening. And then Stephon Gilmore, he continued to get beat on some of the big receiving routes, especially against Ryan Fitzpatrick, which was kind of jarring.
Well, I mean, the problem with things like that is the defense did so well at the beginning of the season, it got right to their heads. Remember when they played the Jets in the first time they played the Jets this year, it was actually the second time they played the Jets this year when they actually faced Sam Darnold. And he was mic'd up and he said, "It's like I'm seeing ghosts out there." They turned that into being the boogeyman and were selling t-shirts and hashtags and just marketing themselves. And I think they forgot that they still had to play football. And they were too worried about being popular in the NFL and being one of those elite groups of players that everyone talked about than actually proving themselves on the field.
So then the defense would be the reason for the collapse, because...
No, I don't. I think the offense still had way more to do with the collapse than the defense.
All right, so a subpar offense, a subpar defense, a subpar quarterback for 2019 led to one heck of a collapse. So let's talk about the future for the Patriots. Obviously a big offseason coming up, from Tom Brady to other big focal points on both offense and defense. So we have a new screen here as far as what we think is maybe some of the top concerns for the Patriots to address during this offseason.
Right, and it's been a long time since the Patriots have had to address like every part of their team, and they also have to address holes in their coaching staff. So I think we're kind of in for a bumpy ride next year, no matter what happens.
That's
because
true.
There's going to be a lot of change with that team. There's like 6 or 7 key defensemen that have contracts up, and they also want to get back Tom Brady and are willing to pay him $30 million plus a year, apparently. maybe including the dead cap space, maybe not including the dead cap space. I have no idea, but neither does Robert Kraft, and 95% sure. So there's going to be an upheaval even if Tom Brady is back next year. And I think that the first thing that they need to address, especially if they do want to get Tom Brady back, is a tight end position. Because Tom Brady is a tight ends quarterback. He was at his most elite with Rob Gronkowski on the field, and you can't change my mind about that. So they need an actual tight end, and I'm not talking about 38-year-old Ben Watson. I don't know if he's actually decided to retire yet.
It's elementary.
It could be. There's actually there's Greg Olsen is now a free agent, but he said before the Super Bowl that the Patriots weren't going to be interested in him because they're still trying to get Rob Gronkowski back. Stop trying to get Rob Gronkowski back. The man is banged up, and he does not want to play football anymore.
Gronk Beach was a big hit.
He said last weekend that there were parts of last season that he doesn't remember because of head injuries. It would be the meanest thing possible to make that man come and play football again after all he gave up in his body and what have you this season or last season. Okay, move on. If you want to draft one, draft one. Randy Moss's son is declared for the draft. He's a tight end out of LSU, Thaddeus Moss. That might be someone that they go after. And there's also possibilities that they're trading for. They thought about O.J. Howard over before the last trade deadline, so he might be another name. But if the Cincinnati ends up with Joe Burrows, he might want to stay and actually have a quarterback. But I think the tight end position is not only going to be best for the team, but best if you want to get Brady back.
So the offense starts with a quarterback. It started with Tom Brady for the past 20-plus years. It started with Drew Bledsoe before that, and the list goes on and on. The quarterback is the most expensive spot on the field now because you're talking about Tom Brady, a 42, 43-year-old quarterback coming back at potentially $30 to $35 million per year. The question's going to remain, what does Tom Brady want to do? Does he know what he wants to do? The Patriots have to have a backup option. And some of the backup options aren't as attractive as far as names go as Tom Brady.
Right.
You're talking about Andy Dalton, Jameis Winston, Teddy Bridgewater.
Possibly.
You're talking about some of the backup quarterbacks, and I think we both agree that this is going to probably be more or less a bridge year.
Right.
We're not saying they're going to go 5-11, but 9-7, 10-6, competing for the AFC East Championship with Buffalo, probably. And I think as far as your offense on the field and where it all starts, it starts with the quarterback. If not free agency, they need to seriously look at a quarterback in the first 2 rounds, and it could possibly happen. San Francisco is looking at the potential of having Garoppolo on the team or not. So it's very possible San Fran could cut ties with Jimmy G after bringing them back to the Super Bowl.
And I think that it would be funny, I think, if they ended up swapping. Because I think if that San Francisco job opened up, Brady's never coming back to New England. That was the team he grew up watching. That's his hometown. If San Francisco's job opens up, he's going to San Francisco. And we saw during the Super Bowl that Kyle Shanahan does not trust Jimmy Garoppolo to do much, if anything at all. So there's a real possibility that they won't want him back this year. And I guarantee you that as quick as Tom Brady will be signed with the 49ers, Bill Belichick will sign Jimmy Garoppolo because we know that that's his guy. That's the guy he drafted. That's the guy he wanted and had to get rid of because of Tom's ego. And I think that Bill Belichick would be a better coach for Jimmy Garoppolo because as much as we all say that Kyle Shanahan is a quarterback's coach, he has now lost a Super Bowl being a quarterback's coach with Matt Ryan, who choked in the 4th quarter of the Super Bowl. And then the same thing happened with Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think not being able to trust him had a lot to do with that, and I think Bill Belichick trusts Jimmy Garoppolo more. So I think quarterback is 2. I don't think Teddy Bridgewater will be available because I think Drew Brees is going to retire. He kind of was doing his goodbye tour at the Super Bowl this weekend, it seemed like, and he might stick around for one more year, because they do have a team that's kind of on the verge of being a Super Bowl team. But I think that he might hang it up and Bridgewater will become the head coach, the starting quarterback of New Orleans.
So for me, number 2 comes down to the wide receiver. This season for the Patriots was such a fluid situation because you had the Antonio Brown situation. He played for a game. Josh Gordon got traded, and a couple weeks later he got suspended, so maybe right call there. But you look at the receiving core right now for the Patriots, it's obviously led by Julian Edelman, but then you have receivers like Philip Dorsett, Mohamed Sanu, you have your rookie wide receivers in Harry and Myers. So do you want to stick with those receivers or do you want to draft new ones? That's going to be a big question. I think the Patriots are going to go out there and try and make some trades for some wide receivers that are familiar with the NFL. I don't know if this is really a draft coming up that is heavy with wide receivers. There is a couple of wide receivers on Oklahoma. I know CeeDee Lamb, I think, is one name that I've heard, but he's going to go probably in the upper teens, low 20s, probably to a team like Miami with one of the picks they traded for.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the wide receivers, that's definitely my number 3. And I think you're right. I think they're going to have to trade for somebody. And it's going to have to be someone that Tom Brady, again, is going to actually want to come back to throw the ball to. Some of the names being thrown around is Sammy Watkins. His contract is up in Kansas City, and it doesn't look like they'll bring him back, especially if they're going to give Pat Mahomes a big contract. So it'll kind of depend on what kind of money the Patriots are willing to offer someone like Sammy Watkins. And of course, he's also another one of those players that doesn't have a huge respect for his coaches, it feels like. He's already threatened to sit out next season, apparently.
I think that was more for like health reasons, kind of like just a year off and then come back.
I don't know. It's kind of like an up and down situation because he definitely wants a big contract. But he's the number 3 receiver in Kansas City right now, so I don't think they're definitely not going to give him a big contract. I don't know if anyone else will. Another option is OBJ. Obviously, he's not happy in Cleveland. I don't think anyone can be happy in Cleveland. I think it's like a place where your football career goes to die. And before OBJ's career dies, I think someone needs to rescue him out of there because he's a good receiver. He's got some other issues off the field. And the Patriots might be a little trigger happy with that because of what happened with Antonio Brown this year. But I don't think OBJ's issues are even close to the issues that Antonio Brown has. So I think that OBJ would be kind of the best option for them.
Well, thank God OBJ doesn't have issues like Antonio Brown. But for me, number 3 is the tight end. And you can go ahead and try and talk Rob Gronkowski into coming back all you want. I don't think it's going to happen. I think the Patriots go ahead and re-examine the option of O.J. Howard with Tampa Bay because their quarterback could be changing as well. Jameis Winston is a free agent. He's looking for a ridiculous amount of money, matching Tom Brady. But, maybe Tampa Bay wants to go ahead and tank for a year. If that's the case, you go ahead, trade O.J. Howard to the Patriots for their first-round draft pick. I think they might be willing to part with a first-round draft pick for a tight end like that, try and lure Tom Brady back. Because, as you said,
he's doesn't do a lot with first-round draft picks anyway, so does it actually matter if he has one or not?
Ba-dum-bum. And we've seen in some of the top teams in the AFC, Baltimore, Kansas City, they have those tight ends that really help out the quarterback, really help the offense move along. San Francisco has the same thing with George Kittle. You need a tight end in today's NFL to do anything offensively. You have a wide receiver as a deep threat, then you have your tight end kind of as that screen pass guy between the numbers. So that's going to be one of the big concerns for me to address coming up this offseason.
Yeah, and it looks like we got one left. The defense. I think, like I said before, there's a lot of defensive players, big name defensive players, that have contracts expiring now. One of them you mentioned before, Kyle Van Noy. I do not see him getting a contract here. Only because I feel like there are other players that are becoming free agents, a.k.a. Tom Brady, that they'd prefer to pay over someone like Kyle Van Noy. Devin McCourty is another one. That's an interesting one because he's been with the Patriots for his whole career. He's toyed with the idea of retiring. I think he might be someone that's doable to re-sign because I don't think he'll want a long contract. I think he'll want 1 or 2 years, finish his career with his brother, and then they can both kind of ride off into the sunset together.
See if we can get a connection like the Wi-Fi connection apparently that we have. But for me, it comes down to the coaching. This season was kind of a cluster as far as the defensive coaching goes. You had Bill Belichick really be that defensive play caller, but you had Gerard Mayo in there and also Stephen Belichick. And some of the other pieces that you are talking about here are Jamie Collins. Is he going to come back? Dante Hightower, he's always an injury risk, so you have to kind of plan for him. So the defense, as great as they were, as highly touted as they were, especially in the secondary, really it's along the front lines that you need to worry about your defensive linemen and in the secondary as well, kind of those linebacking positions.
Right.
So as far as expectations for what we can expect for the 2020 season, with what we know for the roster, what's the realistic record for the Patriots right now before these changes?
I'm going to say 9-7 without Tom Brady and 11-5 with Tom Brady.
I'm going to go 10-6 with Tom Brady if everything stays the way it has that we talked about for the past 10-15 minutes. If they don't have Tom Brady, you could be talking about a 7-9, 6-10 season.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of questions, and it feels weird as a Patriots fan that we get to go ahead and watch what's going to happen. We get to kind of blend in with the rest of the NFL. It finally happened, NFL world.
And I think one of the interesting points that was brought up on ESPN the day after the Super Bowl was Pat Mahomes had said something in his press conference that they are going to be the next dynasty in the AFC, and they may be. They definitely have the power to be. I also think Baltimore could be it. And I'm not going to count out the Patriots yet because I feel like it's dangerous. However, it was brought up that the reason why the Patriots have been so successful in the past is because of the pay cuts that Tom Brady has taken.
Mm-hmm.
He's never demanded this kind of money before. He's always put the team ahead of himself. And it was pointed out that he's one of the only quarterbacks that has done that. Drew Brees has done it as well. But the Patriots have been the dynasty for the last 20 years. That's my entire life, basically. And it's because Tom Brady has been able to has taken those pay cuts.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be the end of the dynasty because one, now Tom Brady wants this money, and then two, whoever they end up with quarterback after Tom Brady isn't necessarily going to want to take team-friendly deals. And I think that's also true if Pat Mahomes goes into Kansas City and demands a big deal, which he deserves. They're not going to be able to sustain also having Tyreek Hill and Damian Williams and anyone else on that team.
We'll also talk about the next quarterback. If it, for some reason, is going to be Jarrett Stidham or whoever the next potentially young quarterback is, there's going to be a lot of pressure to try and live up to the standards of Patriots fans because they just endured a 20-year dynasty like we're never going to ever see again in the sport.
And I think it's going to be a difficult situation for them because even if they're the most talented quarterback coming out of whatever draft class it is, that's a lot of pressure to live up to. It's a lot of pressure to live up to. So I think that no matter who it is not going to be as successful. And then the guy after him will be the one that's successful because you think, well, this guy kind of sucked, so I can only get better from here.
All right, buckle up, Patriots fans. We're about to go on a bumpy ride.
Woo.
But we have the TD Garden teams, the Celtics and the Bruins.
It's definitely Celtics and Bruins time.
Yeah, Red Sox.
No.
We'll talk about them next time on the Out of Bounds State of the Teams. For Mary Evers, I'm John Luck. Thanks for watching.